So guys, hopefully you like this new style of how I'm doing videos. I'm going to try and do more videos like this, hopefully it goes well. And I've pretty much cut the intros. But to get into the actual point of this video, today I wanted to cover my 5 years and what has changed. Essentially, I've been bushcrafting / practicing survival for right around 5 years now, and I wanted to go over what has changed for me, how I've evolved my kit, not just with this particular gear, but how my mind has actually changed to different things, such as when I very first started the whole bushcraft survival, I was very much into building my own shelters and bringing the tools out that were needed to build my own shelters. Now I've kind of changed that. I also really disliked things like folding saws, buck saws, and stuff like that, but when I first got into bushcrafting, I just couldn't stand them. I would never carry them, and I would generally discourage other people. Kind of evolution that I made with bushcrafting was initially I started carrying a lot of gear that I really didn't need, but I think this is something that bushcrafters and survivors kind of mistake they all make really early, is that they were carrying stuff that we don't really need. And so my first real move to a more minimalistic style was the camelback blowfish. This is the linchpin, so I do not have the blowfish out here with me, but that was the first real tool. So that was the first real kit or pack that got me thinking minimalistic. I know in the beginning I used to just see stuff that was useful and I would throw it in the backpack, and the backpack got really weighted down, and like I said, it just had a lot of junk in it. So I moved to the blowfish, and then I actually was able to trim more of it down by moving to the Maxpedition. I cannot remember the name of it right now, but I moved to the Maxpedition. I'll annotate the name of it, and that was a really great Maxpedition Pact gear slinger. That's what it is, and the gear slinger was great. And honestly, I'd probably still be using the gear slinger most of the time if it wasn't for the fact that I have to carry quite a bit of camera gear when I'm out in the woods bushcrafting, and you can't really tell right now because I'm actually using a chunk of it for this video, but I do have to carry a tripod, DSLR, shotgun mic, and all these different things for the camera and the other GoPro. So I don't really have enough space in the Maxpedition Pact to handle all of the camera equipment, but overall, especially with the Maxpedition, it really got me thinking on how I can make a very small but very effective kit. And I really keep that in mind even with this linchpin. This linchpin, though it may seem kind of fullish, I don't know, it doesn't really look too full, it really is never that full. Even if you see my long-term setups, it is never really particularly full. And that's just because I don't really think I need to have a great amount of gear for being out in the woods. Especially now, I have a lot more experience in utilizing the natural resources around me, so I just have not found to need even the amount of gear that I initially started. This next point you guys may have never known about, because this was really before the channel, and this is my true second point, before slimming the packs down. Something that I really disliked when I originally started, or I should say something that I really liked when I originally started, was the Dave Canterbury style of a one-tool option, and I was a huge subscriber to that. I really loved big knives that you could just take one knife out there. You didn't need an axe, you didn't need a saw, you didn't need anything. It could just be like just that one knife. And I was a large subscriber to that thought, and so one change for me that it took me a little while, but overall I have really come to like, and you guys have noticed this has really become like a staple in my channel, is neck knives. And these knives are not the knives that I started out with. I actually started out, I think if you guys go watch the review, I'm pretty sure I mentioned it, but the first knife I started out with was a cold steel roach belly, and that thing was a phenomenal neck knife. Of course, these are my two current, which is the LT Wright Camp Muck and the Mora Eldris red. Those are the two current, but it really started out with that cold steel roach belly, and what I loved was having a knife that was easily accessible just right here that you could pull out. It was always right there on you. It was very easy to manage, and once again, it helped me scale down my pack. As I begin to learn more about the land, I realized that I didn't need such harsh, crude, big tools to help me just survive in the woods, but I could actually use small, precise tools to help me out here, you know, processing the things that I really need. And that was a really great point to see, and a definite learning curve. Major change for me that I really moved on to was saws and being useful. Now, for a good half of my bushcrafting kind of career, if you will, I really just disliked saws. And admittedly, it's still truthful that saws are not as useful as something like an axe. And overall, I was like, I'm just a pack axe fan. All I carry is just a pack axe and, you know, a knife to build shelters and stuff like that, and to harvest firewood. I really was less of a fan of saws because saws were really only good for cutting wood, and you couldn't really process and do feather sticks with them. They weren't as versatile, in my opinion, at least at that time. But overall, I finally got a buck saw. This is not it, but I don't have the buck saw with me here, but I finally got a buck saw, and that really kind of changed my mind, that 24-inch buck saw, because it is very fast through wood, and I can definitely respect it and its precision, especially with notching. I have used that saw in particular for quite a bit of notch work because you can just be so much more precise with a saw than you ever can with an axe. Admittedly, once again, it's not like you'll be feather sticking with a saw, but you know, you have knives on you that can do that. So it's kind of a moot point, and overall I realized not only that, but the fact, what really helped me see full circle was that with a saw, you can have a very powerful package in such a lightweight and reasonably small range. When it comes to axes, their effectiveness is highly based upon how heavy and how large the axe is, whereas a saw, still kind of in the same way, it really depends on how long the blade is, but you don't have to have an extremely heavy or extremely long saw to get a very good amount of work done. And things like what I am actually carrying, let's get it out. Things like this Silky Saw, and this is the Silky Big Boy. Do expect a review on this. I have been extremely impressed by the Big Boy, but this is the Silky Big Boy. And things like this folding saw, where I was like, you know, a year or two, well, around 2 years ago, I would have never ever taken a folding saw out into the woods. But I have been using this Big Boy and of course the buck saw. And like I said, what I really realized with them is just the amount of work you can get done in a package this small, and this, I'm here to tell you, is a lot lighter than this. And so these two can do about the equivalent work. It's really probably more of a comparison between the buck saw that I have and this in comparable work. But once again, even the buck saw is substantially lighter than this axe. So that was a really big thing for me to see, was the saw versus axe. And like I said, still the saw is not as versatile. It is a lot lighter, and so it makes up for those cons with other pros that I do enjoy. So lastly is gun. I almost entirely forgot this, I will say, but lastly is the gun. And I have had quite a bit of changes with hunting tools, and if you guys don't know, I like being extremely well versed, everything from bows and blowguns to air rifles, and just a whole bunch of things. I have a lot of experience with many different hunting implements, but overall the gun, especially this one, I keep coming back to. This is actually, when I very first started, this was the gun I carried, and I really gravitated back to it because, one, it's a gun that I have, and secondly, I find this overall package extremely good. I'm going to be doing more videos on why I chose a lever action and why I continue to use a lever action as a bushcraft tool. But overall, to kind of summarize a little bit here, is that with this gun in particular, I really like how tiny it is. This is quite a small gun. If you guys see, that's very nice, because not only does that mean I can attach it to the backpack, or it's just less of a burden for me to carry and swing around, but in this kind of more tight-packed woodland, I can actually use this easier in hunting. And other than that, I like how much ammo I can carry. That's one of the reasons why I've once again gravitated back towards with 22, because for a while I did run a 20 gauge shotgun and a muzzle loader, but the problem with them that I really found was that the ammo was heavy to carry, whereas this is very lightweight. I can carry easily a couple hundred rounds for this thing in the same spot that would have been like 10 20 gauge shot shells. So this just overall, in my personal bushcrafting, makes the most sense. And yes, it's not the most versatile tool, which was something that I kind of subscribed to, and that's why I liked the 20 gauge shotgun for so long, was it's just so versatile. But overall, I didn't really care about the versatility in the long run. You know, like year after year, I was like, you know, I'm not really using these versatility things. So I just ended up gravitating towards my old favorite, and it's just a 22 rifle. So that is what I personally use, and yes, I get a lot of criticism because people think I'm going to get mauled by a bear, and the 22 is just not going to be enough to kill the bear. But those cases, well, it could truly happen. It certainly could. It's not extremely likely, and if we start playing with what ifs, then I will end up carrying a freaking 50 BMG sniper rifle because, you know, I can't get too close to anything. So, you know, I can play what ifs all day, but at the end of the day, day after day, this 22 is just what works for me. I can naturally kill many different things very well, and overall in my system, this gun just works the best. And same could be said with bows. I really love bows, and I do run traditional bows especially occasionally, but I really dislike how much upkeep they are. You do have to be very careful with them so as to not break or damage the limbs on them. The arrows as well are very obnoxious to carry. I mean, they're probably one of the worst as far as ammo goes. They're probably one of the worst weapons to, or not weapons, but hunting implements to carry for ammo, because they're like this long and they're just very obnoxious to try and deal with. So I don't generally carry bows unless I really want to do some bow hunting. So yeah, that's why I carry the 22, and I've actually gone back to the 22, which, like I said, this is what I started off with, and now I'm returning back to it just because it works so well. So aside from those 3 points now onto the fourth point, and this is one that I've recently, or at least semi-recently, kind of came to the point of, and that is finally the whole shelter thing. I know I have got comments over the year talking about like, oh, why do you always build shelters and stuff? And admittedly, I do think it's a very fun thing to do out in the woods, to go build nice permanent shelters that you can always return to. And you know, they're really great works of art, I like to think, and they show off your skill, I think, in a very good way. But overall, I'm becoming more and more inclined to actually start to carry at least components of shelters. I don't think I'll really ever start carrying like full-blown tents that you just set up and, you know, it's like you are carrying the exact shelter you're going to use. But now I've recently started to carry major components to shelter craft with me. And more specifically, in this particular relation, I've been carrying this tarp. As you can see here, hopefully you can see, it's a little bit snow covered, but I'm carrying this tarp, and this is just my standard gray and brown tarp. It is brown on the other side of it, but right now I'm just carrying gray side out. But this has been just a really awesome experience to start to use things like the tarp, because it's really shown me just how much more effective a tarp shelter can be. I mean, obviously with a tarp, there's very little heat escape, and there's very little light inlet. It's a very interesting thing, at least for me, to see the differences between the shelters. There's so much more windproof when you have something like a tarp helping block the wind, because obviously the tarp's not going to let anything in. So when the wind blows or the snow falls, you know, you're not going to be letting any of that in. And I really have come to enjoy that, because it keeps you so much warmer and so much more cozy in a shelter that's built with something like a tarp or something like a Mylar blanket. So overall, I've been making this steady kind of inclination to go over to actually now carrying components of shelters that I want to build out in the woods. And like I said, I've been very much enjoying that piece as well. So hopefully you can see how my changes have been, and these are some of the most major changes that I've gone over. And I can, if you guys want, just let me know in the comments below if you want me to go over how exactly my gear has changed. Though for me, I'm not one of those people that likes to settle on gear for an extremely long time. Like I can't necessarily carry the same gear for like 5 years in a row because I think things are always improving. And aside from maybe something like the GBA, which I'll probably settle on for years, I constantly want to change and experiment with other things. So especially things like knives, they're not necessarily always changing, but they will be changing, especially year to year. So I can't necessarily say, you know, I've only had a couple knives or whatever, but I can go over gear and once again how these different things have affected it. Of course, things like the Mora Eldris, I'm kind of experimenting around with very lightweight, extremely lightweight knives that are also very small as new options to pioneer into for me personally. And certainly with shelters, I'll be thinking about more lightweight and more heavy duty options and different components to try out for that. And same with packs. But overall, those are the major changes that I've had in my mindset as a bushcrafter and kind of how I've evolved as a bushcrafter to trying different gear and changing different. Anyways guys, hopefully you've enjoyed this look at how I've changed my mindsets and overall how my 5 years of bushcrafting has shaped my tastes and my thoughts on what I carry as a backpack setup and what I carry as guns, knives, you know, just overall what I carry. And don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, and for any of you guys who have been bushcrafting, even if you've just been bushcrafting a year, don't forget to comment and tell me you guys' thoughts, or what is something that you guys have actually changed in your kit, or what's something that, you know, actually getting out into the woods, actually practicing the craft has made you come to a realization, or what are some tools like the saw that you ended up just trying out just on a whim, but you actually really fell in love with. Definitely let me know, and I'm out.